Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done.
So welcome everyone to the latest, I'm going to say the greatest edition of the Urban Legends podcast. I recently heard this quote, which has become one of my favorite quotes of all times. And it says, the two most important days in your life are the day that you're born and the day that you find out why. It was Mark Twain. Even though I don't like Mark Twain like that, I love that quote. And when I met the guest that I'm going to be interviewing today is when I figured out why I had become a teacher. It was 1997. We just figured out that was years ago. And 7 years ago, I started a new job as an algebra teacher at a middle/high school on the south side of Chicago called Chicago International Charter School. And while I was there, I think we created magic in that classroom. So there were students in my class who, for the most part, were like go-getters and really understood the math. And then there were a couple who didn't, but it didn't matter because what we did in that room was we kind of bonded with each other in a different way. And I'm going to have Dr. Adrian talk about that. But I know that it felt like to me when I reflect on that time that we were together, it didn't feel like we were just on the south side or we were in an urban school or whatever. It felt like we were learning math together, but we were also doing life together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Went on trips together. I just made them go places with me. It wasn't even a part of the curriculum. I took them to pizza. I took them to Dixie Kitchen. We did an assembly, and we even lost a student together. One of our classmates was murdered, and we went through that together. It was like a family. And so when I saw Dr. Adrian now, who I just ran into again on LinkedIn and saw all that she's been able to do, that's how I know that I'm doing the right thing. That's how I know this is what I was meant to do. So, as we get started, I always ask person who's my guest to tell us about their journey. So Dr. Adrian, how did you end up in DC? Tell us what you remember about our time together on the South Side 27 years ago. And you don't even look bad at 27.
It depends on the angles and the glasses. It depends. But my journey to your point, and thank you for giving me the segue, it really started in your classroom. Briefly, prior to going to CICS, I attended a lot of parochial schools in the suburbs, predominantly white. And so going to Chicago International Charter School, where the teachers and the educators and the liaisons were brown skinned and looked like me, was a culture shock. I had never experienced that. Maybe once in my earlier childhood, but not so much in my late middle school. And so to your point, I definitely felt a unit, a family. That's kind of where I started to blossom and learn of myself. And it really was until I transferred. Sadly, my mom was like, you know what? I need you to be able to go with your friends to school, and I need some eyes. And so I had to transfer for, proximity and convenient reasons.
Right.
And I met my senior year psychology teacher, Mrs. Ceballos, and similar to you, he literally challenged me. She definitely held me accountable, and she read one of my papers and she was like, this is all you submitting? Clearly you have more. What are you doing? And literally took time and sat me in that classroom until I gave her something that was of quality. And so it was then where I wanted to go down the path of psychology. And so I would go and get my bachelor's in psychology, and I worked at a residential facility where a lot of the clinicians and the psychotherapists were white women. and they were misdiagnosing youth, in my opinion. And I was spending more time with the youth and was like, that is not what they have. Like, they just need a hug, or they just need to be heard or listened to, or their basic needs need to be met. And I pursued my master's in community counseling, and then started to follow, again, my teacher, Dr. Cook, who I was mildly obsessed with his brain, and just really followed him. And that's when I earned my doctorate in counselor education. And so I will go on to work at this residential facility for like 9 years. Literally, it took all of my 20s. I transitioned very shortly to a juvenile detention center in Chicago. Learned a lot of skills there. Also learned that like I wanted to be the change. And shortly I began my tenure at a psych hospital on the west side of Chicago. Through there, in my internship, I landed on the west side of Chicago, North Lawndale, at BBF, which is BBF Family Services. Now they've got another rebrand and are like BBF of the Arts. But that's when I really soared my wings, and I really learned what a needs assessment was and how it can be implemented in the communities to kind of learn exactly what students and their families needed to thrive. And I created a lot of behavioral health programming, line dancing for seniors for free, fresh produce for them to learn how to, fix foods for themselves, how to buy dinner for a week off of $20 to feed their families. And so it wasn't until shortly after I was recruited to move to the nation's capital in the district and kind of take some of those skills that I've learned and implement them here. And so that's exactly what I did. After being on the assessment unit for about a good year and a half, interfacing a lot with the probation officers, all those attorneys, GALs, judges, the director at the time really saw that I had a skill set and allowed me to formulate my own mental health department in the community for our agency. And that's what I currently do right now.
So when we talked about it a little bit to get ready for our conversation, and we talked about what you do in that department that you've created, I asked you to tell me like a success story, or what is one story that you can remember about a child that you've been working with that would be like, yeah, this is why I'm doing that?
I'm fortunate, even though I work in the deep end of the juvenile justice system and we see a lot of fatality, we experience a lot of trauma, especially with our parents. We're in the mix with them. Like, this is not just a job. Like, this is actually passion work, right? And actually today I was away at training and I had different things to do, and a parent actually called me this morning. She left me a text message, and I guess I didn't respond quick enough for her. So she called me and she goes, "Hey, my son needs to talk to you again. Like, he is adamant about speaking with you. He's not talking to anybody else that we've hired. He kind of needs this. He's getting ready for pre-trial and he needs a calming word." And I introduced to that particular student guided imagery, mindfulness, so grounding. And it was really impactful and cool in that moment where I'm busy. I'm trying to push different legislative things on my end. And I got a call from a parent whose child is detained in a different jurisdiction asking me to go with him through a mindful moment. And so that was kind of where I'm like, yeah, this is passion work. This is not just the run of the mill. I'm getting a check every 2 weeks, but this is literally my calling and still my assignment. And it was really revitalizing for me.
So you just made me think of something else, which is the actual reason why I wanted to have a podcast series to talk about what happens in urban schools, because I can feel that student that you just told me about. I can feel, because I run into students like that all the time, and the things that they tell me that they've gone through in their lives that end up looking like I've committed a crime, or I did this outrageous thing that society feels is outrageous. But it's all we're all doing the best that we can with the tools that we got, I believe. What can we say to teachers who they don't have the background that you have? They don't have the years of experience that I have. And when it happens in the classroom that somebody, it seems so supremely disrespectful or says something is inappropriate,
But we gotta know, especially if we don't know them well, that we have to figure out like what the root of it is and how. So what advice would you give to teachers so that number one, we don't take it personally. Number two, that we gotta understand what kids are going through, and that's why they're showing up the way that they are. Because it's scary in the moment, especially if you're a new teacher. Even if you're a seasoned teacher, it's like, no, that's disrespectful.
Yeah.
But it happens a lot of times. Like, I don't remember having to deal with that a lot. I know it was a different set of kids. It was a different time.
Oh, you demanded. I think that like that's one of like your superpowers is that the minute you walked in, and let's be very clear, like your presence alone exuded respect, confidence, and this is what it is. Like, listen up. You wore heels. You definitely dressed like you was going into the C-suite. Like you were personable. But like one thing that I feel like you had was empathy and understanding, right? You led with caring and regard, and it was genuine. And I think a lot of kids recognize real. Kids know when you're doing things just off of checklists or when you really care about it. And so my advice, really to teachers and educators in that setting that have the platform to really change the narrative is to be consistent. I created something called the 5 to Thrive. People can manipulate it however, but I make it so consistent that when it is an issue, when there is a concern, it's not like I'm just coming at the woodwork because you've heard me say it over and over. So it's what have made you smile today? Is there something right now in this moment that you want to tell me away from others? Okay, so right now, if I pick up my phone, who we calling, and you know for a fact it's going to answer. That's identifying support. Making you smile, that's let me know if you've had any happiness, like if you're able to be aware of it. That's emotional intelligence, right? In that moment. What are you looking forward to today the most? Outlook is helping me to understand. And what is just such a Debbie Downer, or I always be like, what's pissing you off so much that you just want to, if you can take care of it, you can handle it. If you will be handling it, you know what I'm saying? You'll handle it rather. And it's in those moments where like kids can be transparent. And I know that may sound robotic, but like I'm always asking. I actually see my kids and I'm like this. And sometimes they'll run it along for me. All right, cool. So what can I do in this moment? And how I wrap it up, what can I do in this moment to support you with the things that you share? Like, or is this an immediate action? Do I need to take my glasses off? Like, let me help you in that moment. And that's the accountability factor too, because I definitely don't want to enable our parents and our youth, but I definitely want to empower them. I cannot change their story. I cannot change what goes on when they leave my presence. But what I can do is equip them with the tools to be resilient and to sustain and to thrive. So that's something that I will want to share with teachers and to low-key have a community resource, like one pager on deck, on cue. Maybe make it quarterly if you want to update it. If there's a capacity for you to do it specific to the neighborhoods that you know your kids are coming from, that's helpful. I always have the library and the library events. That's just like what I always do. Kids right now are attached to their phone, so I have a QR code to make them scan. Even though I'm old school and I like tangible things and I want to see it and post it, our kids are attached to their phone. So and I'm texting them and saying, hey, what did you put in your phone? What you're doing after this list? What can I do? And so that's me again, reassuring that like I'm here to support them. Hey, you told me yesterday that, you hate when you come down this route because the X6 is taking too long. So we've created a different way. Are you doing that right now? So now you should be on time for class, or now you should be on time for our sessions. So it's really being intentional with the efforts and then doubling back because they want to know and make sure that people are really caring about what they're, putting out there.
So schools that want to partner with you or that do partner with you in DC, what exactly does that process look like? What do you do with and for the school? Are you going into the school? Or are they referring kids out? Like what exactly does it look
Both.
like?
All can be true. All are true. So as I shared, we're in the deep end of the juvenile justice system, but the mayor has tasked our agency specifically to work with the community, right? And so more recently, this past Friday, we did an outreach where the school experienced a homicide nearby the campus. And so we're all about mental health and like improving one's outlook. And so what we did for the pre-K through 8th graders is we pulled up at the school, collaborated with some of the other neighboring forest service agencies, and we had self-care kits out there. We had an opportunity, we did a pledge, so we had students on a tablecloth write one thing that they're happy about and one thing they wish they can change. And then once they did that activity, they were able to create their own self-care kits. And so they had the opportunity to choose from like fidgets, stress balls, bubbles, Play-Doh. There's some affirmations out there. So things that they really would use, and it's not just like fluff. And then of course we had some mindful snacks, the good kind, not the bad kind where you don't want to eat. Not the ones in your grandma's purse, but like the ones that you want to go buy it. Yeah. And we get referrals all the time, like school principals. We make relationships. That's something that I'm proud our department is on. I didn't mention that our department, we named it the HEART team. The acronym is HRT for Health and Restoration Team. So we're identifying that there is a stigma within the Black and Brown community on mental health. And so, but if you're going to say, I'm going to the HEART team, or I'm going to see Dr. A, it's not taboo, right? It's not like, oh, that's what you're doing. You're crazy. Something wrong with you, right? And so that's something that we do. We also partner with the MPD, Core Social Services, and we really just go out there. And so if there's a school out there that we know that have some activities that can need support with our efforts, we'll go out and we'll identify who we are and how we can be of support.
So in Chicago, I don't know if there is an organization like yours. There could be, I'm not sure. But if I were a parent and I'm watching this episode and I feel like my child could benefit from some of those wraparound services, because what I saw as a principal at school, we have a counselor and a guidance counselor and all these people, but they're so wrapped up doing paperwork that they don't get the chance to do that real work that you're talking about right now. So if I'm a parent and I'm at a school and I feel like my child could benefit from something like you're speaking about, where would they even start to like research? Like, what do you Google to get this kind of help in Chicago?
I think that is a really great question. And that was something that we know that Chicago and a lot of other major cities, they have a lot of people doing the same work, but they're not speaking, they're not talking. And so my first bet would be talk to the counselor, the school guidance counselor, the principal, to see if there's things out there, because 9 times out of 10, sometimes leaders do have access or know someone who knows someone. If you're audacious and you don't want to play the waiting game, create one yourself. Be intentional and set out. I'm sure you met some parents in a pickup line, or you recognize somebody from the neighborhood. In church, they say when 2 or more are gathered. So create that space, create those resources, and be able to advocate for yourself exactly what needs that you want your school and your child specifically to have to improve their outlook on life, to improve your own personal outlook in life. There's something to be said about when you know better, you do better. And so while the school is looked upon for different various of things, they need to feed the kid, educate the kid, make them safe. It's something to be said about when you give the kid tools and resources to be leaders of their own paths, right? And so I would definitely encourage parents to just start at the baseline first and then work your way out. And I mean outwards, so make it broad so that you'll be able to have those resources.
I love it. Okay. So I always end the episodes with a quote from a person, with a quote that when I was speaking to you made me think of a quote. And so the one that I thought about as soon as we got off the phone, I thought about this author, Bettina Love. And she wrote a book called We Want to Do More Than Survive, which makes me think about the work that you're doing. So the quote is, educators, students, and parents need to be on a path to wellness together for schools to be sites of healing. Schools cannot be doing just all right. They have to be doing well by putting everybody's mental health as the first priority and understanding how systems of oppression impact children. So, when you think about that and us being a group of people who need to heal together, and schools kind of being the focus point for a lot of people, what are your thoughts about that as a quote? Everybody's mental health being the first priority.
That's the basic needs. How can one, I mean, even when we fly on the airplanes, right? They tell you to put your mask on first, right? And then help whomever you need to help. So it's really just being intentional and understanding that if you take care of yourself, then everything else is taken care of. So really learning what that looks like for you in that moment, and know that things can be changed. What I need right now, it may not be the same as what I need in January. So it's that self-awareness that you have to be mindful of. I love writing things down. Writing things down is literally the cat's meow, because not only am I affirming, but I'm making a proclamation, right, to myself. And so sometimes, you know, what you see is for today, but your vision is for tomorrow. So writing things down helps you to have that vision for more than just today in the aftermath. And so that's kind of what I think of when I hear that. Mental health to me is something that I eagerly seek after daily. It never looks the same. External factors play a huge part in it, of course. Yeah. But it is something that I try daily to be mindful of. And at the end of the day, reflect upon, did I do something right? Giving myself grace right now in this season, being mindful that things are going to change and that there are going to be things that I'm not able to control, and be okay with that, right? And so just making sure that you're being mindful of the efforts to contribute to one's self-care is important.
So before we leave, I never asked anybody this question before, but okay, so what was your favorite thing about our time together?
All of it.
The classroom, I thought of so many things.
All of it. I literally was mildly obsessed with your class. Mildly obsessed. I mean, I learned that I was a charmer in your class. I learned to be astute and what that meant in your class. I learned timeliness, like time management. You were a stickler for that. And we needed to look neat. So like I remember, and I don't even know if you remember this, I came in and my sweater, I guess I left it in my backpack, so it was wrinkled. And you were like, you are not in my classroom with that wrinkled sweater on. And I was like, and you didn't mean it in a like salacious way, but it was more so like, okay, let me get myself together. And so it was moments like that. You taught me to be prepared, but we used to have so much fun. We used to have so much. I just remember laughing. I remember our class having the highest percentage, so we laughed and we played and we worked hard to. But we had so many good moments. And then, of course, for our birthdays, because we're both Taurus sisters, going to Dixie Kitchen, and I thought it was so cool. I remember telling my mom, like, at the time, your name was Miss Lewis. Miss Lewis want to take me to eat at Dixie Kitchen. And my mom was like, your teacher want to take you where? I'm like, yes. And I was like, I need a good outfit because she gonna come like this. And I need to make sure that my outfit, like, I remember those moments. And so, like, I would never, ever, ever forget that. That's probably why, like, we're always, every time you post, you'll be like, yeah. Because you've given us so many good nuggets and memories that are gonna last for a lifetime.
Thank you so much, Dr. A. I have never been prouder of anybody. If you were my own child, I couldn't be prouder of everything that you have done, everything that you're doing, but mostly the things that you're doing to make things better for our kids and for people in general, parents, kids, and everybody. So I just really want to celebrate you and thank you for being a guest on Urban Legends.
Thank you. Of course, a million times, yes. Anything. I enjoy being here and I receive the kudos.
Thank you.